Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, learners. Grade 12. My name is Impahama. We are going to look at exam prep paper 2 mathematics. Remember, we are writing June examination next week, Monday. So we are going to look at some topics that we will be preparing ourselves for that Monday paper that we'll be writing. So very important to make sure that you follow. Where you have questions, please make it a point that you ask the questions. Thank you very much. Now, like I indicated, we're going to look at paper 2 examination preparation for June examination. Right, this is what we are having. Right, you know that in paper 2 we have 4 topics. I must say that paper 2 have 4 topics. Is statistics, we know that you have analytical geometry, we have trigonometry, and we have Euclidean geometry. Those are the 4 topics that we have in paper 2. I must be upfront to say to the grade 12, remember now the statistics supposed to be in term 3. Supposed to be in term 3. Yes, I know that it will differ from one school to another, whereby some of the schools have already done the statistics in preparation for the June examination. But mainly the focus for today then under statistics will be grade 10 and grade 11. I'm going to leave out the grade 12. We've hoped that, you know, if you have done it, then it's a plus on your side. Remember, we are doing statistics grade 11, grade 12 in term 3. Right, what is it that we must expect under statistics? Very important. We have the first part that we must talk about today, which is what? We have here, we have a 5-number summary. This is what we are having. Then from 5-number summary, I must indicate that 5-number summary, you know very well that we need to arrange our data. It's very important, whereby we look for the what? We look for the median, we look for the Q1, we look for the Q3. But before you can do that one, please make it a point that you arrange your data in ascending order. You arrange your data in ascending order, and then after that, now you can look for the middle one, and then after that, that will be your median, and then you know how to look for Q1, and also you need to know how to look for the Q3 as well. I must indicate grade 12 that, remember, in some instances you will have a data whereby when you will count the score, they are even, or in some cases there are odd numbers that you have when you count the scores. Very easy to work with the odd numbers. I can make an example. Very easy to work with the odd numbers. Say for an example, we've got 12, we've got 14, we've got 17, then we've got 19, then we've got 23. So we've got 2, 4, 25 here, and then we have 31. Very important. Now, I can just count for you. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 is an odd number. So if I were to determine the median, it's going to be very easy for me to determine the median. Why? Because I must look at the middle number here. So in this case, I count 1, 2, 3 this side, and the same apply. So the middle number here is what? It's 17. Can you see? It's very, very easy to determine the Q1, the Q2, and the Q3 if our scores is what? Is an odd. But it becomes a challenge when we have even. When we have even, it will be 12, it will be 14, 17, and 19. Then we've got 23, we've got 25, we've got 31, then 45. Let me write it there. It's 45. Now, how many scores do I have? I've got 2, 4, 6, 8. I've got 8 scores here. I've got 8 scores now. Which one is the middle? Then I count 1, 2, 3, 4 this side, 1, 2, 3, 4 this side. So both of them here are in the middle. Very, very important. Means in this case then, the median then is equals to the median. The median is equals to what? 19 plus what? 23. Then divided by 2. Then this one then will give us the Q2, or our, which you call it the median. Please take note, with the odd numbers, very easy to work with odd numbers, but the challenge only comes when you talk to the even numbers. Please take note of that. The first step that you must do, make sure that you arrange your data in ascending order, and thereafter then you are able now to determine another one, your Q1, your Q2, your Q3 as well. Yes. That is very important, right? And then from the very same 5-number summary, then we are able now to do what? We are able now to determine the box and whisker. Then there we are. Please, I always say when you draw the box and whisker, let us not use the very same 5 number summary that we have. Use the proper scale so that you are able to see the skewness of the data from the box and whisker. Very, very important. Use the correct scale, because only if you only write the data that appear from 5 number summary, then you're going to have a problem when you are about to comment, because that one will give you only the symmetrical. So which is what we don't want. We want to see if the data is skewed to the left or the data is skewed to the right or symmetrical. That is the most important part. But for you to draw this one, very important, you need to make sure that you have this information that we spoke about earlier on. Very, very important, right? And then I must also say that we have a cumulative frequency table, very important. Remember now, this one now falls under the grouped data. We must be able to complete the table. And please, let us make sure that we understand what is happening there, because we cannot say now always year in, year out will be given the frequency, then we need to determine the cumulative frequency. In some instances, we'll be given the cumulative frequency, whereby now you need to determine the frequency. Please make it a point that you master that you're able to find the frequency if the cumulative is given. But when the frequency is given, then it's easy to determine the cumulative frequency. And then the same apply here, the very same information here, we must be able to take it to ogive, or you take it to cumulative frequency graph. Very important. But what I must say here is that when we sketch this graph, when you sketch the ogive or when you sketch the cumulative frequency graph, very important. Remember, we've got the lower boundaries and as well as the upper boundaries. Most important. I will just write the example here so that you can see. Right, in the table, then you'll be given something like this one here. Then we'll have x is greater than or equals to, then you have 5. Then here will be 15. And then this side we got 15 less than x less or equals to, say we have what, 25. Right, now, this is the lower boundaries that I'm talking about, and this is the upper boundary that I'm talking about. Now, when we sketch the graph, when you plot the points, then we must use the upper boundaries. Very, very important. We use this one, this side we have frequency, then this side we're going to have the cumulative frequency. So it means if this one is 1, then the upper boundaries then will go with the cumulative frequency. It means the point that I need to plot there will be 15 as well as what? Will be 15 as well as 1. Very, very important. We are not using the lower boundaries. We must use the upper boundaries. Very, very important. But the only time when we are going to use the lower one, the only time when we're going to use it is when we grounded the graph. Please keep that in mind. Your graph needs to be grounded, because if you start from 15, 15 is somewhere there, 15 and 1, for example. So, but what is happening at 5? What is happening at 5? Then it means the score there is 0. Then you ground your graph, here you are. That is the only time where you're going to use the lower boundaries. Please keep that in mind, the grade 12. Right. Thank you very much. Please, I said earlier on, for you to find the cumulative frequency, it's easy looking at the frequency, because you just add. If this one is 1, then it goes with 1. But if this one is 5, then you say 1 plus 5, then it will give you 6, right? You take 1 plus 5 will give you 6. Then if the other one is 12, then you say 6 plus 12, then it will give you what? Will give you 18. That is why I said it's very, very easy to read there. To get the cumulative frequency. Please make it a point that you also master the skill of getting back to frequency if you are only given the cumulative frequency. Right, grade 12, I must also indicate that in some instances, yes, the information might be required to read the information from the graph and then put it back to the table. Let us make sure that we practice those ones. Very, very important. Okay. Right, the other one that I must also indicate under the cumulative frequency graph or guide is that you must be able to interpret that graph. Very, very important to interpret it and you understand. And you know very well that from the very same cumulative frequency graph, we can also be asked to determine the median. You can also be asked to determine the Q1, Q2 or interquartile range. Those are the concept or the skills that you must be able to get from the graph. Right. The scatter plot, we did the scatter plot in grade 11. Yes, please make sure that you revise the scatter plot. You must be able to sketch and also to interpret. Those two are very, very important. Very, very important. Right. Now, what is it that we need? We also need to make sure that we know how to use our calculators. Right? Calculators are to be used to calculate the standard deviation. Very, very important. We must also be able to find the variance. I'm going to stop there. Those are the two things that you must be able to calculate. Yes, I did not talk about the mean earlier on. Yes, we also need to know how to calculate the mean. Remember, the mean is the sum of the scores divided by the total number of scores. That is what we need. But those are the skills that you can do on the calculator. The standard deviation, the interpretation of the standard deviation, the variance as well. Right, this one here, the equation of the least square regression, the one at the moment we are not going to worry about because you're going to do it in the next term. It means for the junior examination, then we are not going to get questions on the equation of a least square regression. Right, identification of the outliers from both scatter plot as well as box and whisker. It's very, very important. Remember the formula that we are using. If you are given the data, please make sure that we revise it so that at least you are able to recognize if you do have an outlier from the given data or you don't have the outlier from the given data. Right, let's look at this example. Grade 12 must understand I'm not going to solve any problem. I'm just trying to give an idea of what type of questions that you need to make sure that you look at when you prepare for the Monday paper. Right, now look at the very first question. We are given the data. Please, you read the information above so that you understand what is happening. The first thing that you do, read the information so that at least you're able to look at it, to compare the two, that you know whatever that is given there, really don't talk to the table that we have here below. Right, now the first question says calculate the mean number of passengers traveling in a tower bus. Right, very important. What is important here is what? Is the mean number. Do I know how to calculate the mean? Yes, I know that. And I look at this one. This number here, the scores that are given here is that they are not a grouped data. This one is ungrouped data. Then it's easy for me to do what? It's easy for me to calculate. Now, what do? I know very well that I need to add all these numbers. I need to add them. Then after that, I divided it by 11. Because of what? Because we've got 11 scores. We've got 11 numbers here. Look, the one that we divide with is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is 11 that I'm talking about. You add the scores and then you divide by the total number of the scores. Very important. Right. The second one, or before I pass this one, while we are still in the mean, right, we also have to know how to calculate the estimated mean. That one, then we can only do it under the grouped data. Estimated mean, we can only be able to calculate that under the under the grouped data. How do you do that? I will use the example that I'm having here. This is a grouped data that we have, right? It's a grouped data that we have. Now the question for me was calculate the estimated mean. Calculate the estimated mean. Very, very important. Calculate the estimated mean. So how do I do that one? Then it means for me to do that, I need to have first what? I need to have first the midpoint. I need to determine the midpoint. How do I get the midpoint? Then it means it must be the middle number here. It must be the middle number. In this case, I can take 5 plus 15 will be 20. Then 20 divided by 2, then it is 10. Then it means the midpoint here will be 10. Then the next one I take 15. Then plus 25, then will give me 40, then 40, then 40 divided by 2, then will be 20. Then that will be the midpoint. Then after that, what do? I take the midpoint times the frequency. I take the midpoint multiply by the frequency. So it means I will be having 10 times 1. 10 times 1 is what? Is 20. right? That's what I need. And then after that, I have 20 times 5. Then what do I need? Then you write down the answer. Then once you're done with everything, then now you can add. Nay, you can add. But the information that we need now is the total number here. It's a sum. Therefore, for me to have the estimated mean, I need to have the sum of the midpoint multiplied by the frequency, then divided by the total number. The total number that I'm talking about here will be the one that we get under the frequency, which will be the total number of the cumulative frequency. Please, the two are not the same. With uncrypted data, it's very easy to get the mean because we just add the scores and then divide by the number of scores. But under the estimated mean, where now we calculate the mean for the grouped data, you need to have the midpoint, and then after you take the midpoint, multiply by the frequency. Please make sure that you also practice that when you determine when you calculate the mean. Right, then from there, the next question says, write down the 5-number summary of this data. 5-number summary, we spoke about it. You take the data and then make it a point that it is arranged in ascending order. In this case, yes, we are fine with it. The data is arranged in ascending order. Then now it's easy now to check, okay, which number is in the middle here. And then from there, then for you to determine the Q1, then you take half of the first group here from 8 to the 19. This is the one that will be determining. But now, since we've got the odd number, then I said then it will be easy for you now to determine the median, which will be 19. Then Q1 then will be 10, and then the other one then will be 24. Right? They ask you to draw a box and whisker. Very important. I spoke about it, and then look at 1.4. Refer to the box and whisker, and then comment on the skewness of the data. If your data is not, if the box and whisker is not drawn properly, then it means you won't be able to comment about the data. That's why I said, please make sure that you use the correct scale so that you're able to get the correct graph or diagram. Very, very important. Remember your data, you've got skewed to the left, you've got skewed to the right. Very important. Now, if data is more on the left, then you've got the data skewed to the left. Then if the data is more on the right, then you've got skewed to the right. So those are the two that you need to remember. The more data is on this side, then you can now say data skewed to the left. More data is on this side. Now you can see now the data is skewed to the right. But if both sides are the same, are equal, then we say the data is symmetrical. Please keep that in mind. Okay, right now. Then from there, the standard deviation. I must really talk about this one. Very, very important. How do you calculate the standard deviation? You need to have your calculator. You need to make sure that you are able to use the calculator. Right, please make sure that you practice that skill. You know, you go to the mode, then you select the stairs, then you go to the variance, then from there, then you put in the data. Please, grade 12, let us make sure that we make use of the calculator to avoid making mistakes. You know, 1.1 and 1.5, this one, they only need you to use the calculator just for 2 marks. So now, you can get the standard deviation. Then after getting this one, please, you must be able to comment. Remember, sometimes they can say how many scores fall within one standard deviation or outside standard deviation or more than one standard deviation. Those are the type of questions that we must be able to respond to, right? And we'll look at 1.6. Please let us make sure that we understand, because now we have the one that is above the mean. The bus is one standard deviation above the mean. Now you need to understand, when you talk to the above, not outside, it means it need to be more than one standard deviation. So that is where now you need to remember, okay, this is the one where I take the standard deviation plus the mean. Then the score that is fall outside, that is the score that we will be using. Please, grade 12, make sure that you really revise your grade 10 as well as your grade 11 work. Okay, right, let us now go back to our presentation. Again, now go to the next slide. Then we have question 2. Now on this question, talks to what? Talks to the box and talk to the cumulative frequency. Talk to the cumulative frequency. The very first question from grade 10, write down the modal class of the data. How do we determine the modal class? We always say the one with the highest frequency, that is where the modal class is. Please revise the grade 10, and they say complete the cumulative frequency. Now, because we have the frequency, very easy to get the cumulative frequency, because you just have 7, 7 plus 6, the answer 13, 13 plus 8 will be 21, 21 plus 10 will be 31. We just keep on adding, but please make sure that you master that scheme. All right, and then 2.3 says you draw the augur for cumulative frequency curve to represent the data. Right, yes, in paper 2 we have the answer book. That's one thing that is nice about the paper. And then here we said we are going to use the upper boundary. It means in this case I must use 40, 60, 80, 100, and 120. 40 must go with the 7, not the 7, but the 7 on the cumulative frequency. Then the 60 is a point that I must draw. 60 go with what? 60 the x, then the y, then will be what? 7 plus 6 will give us 13. Then that is the one that we must draw. 6 and 13, and 80. 80 then will go with 21. You see how you plot the points. Those are the points that you must plot so that we can get the cumulative frequency. Right now, I said we need to ground this graph. Very important. Your graph needs to be grounded. But now, when we sketch, we use the upper boundaries. But when we ground, that is the only time where we are going to use the lower bound, the lower part here, which is 20. Now 20 will go with what? 20 will go with a 0. Please keep that in mind. Please, and the interpretation. How many of these managed to get the commission? More than 100 trends. So you need to count. Okay, from the 100, this is how many. It means it's 4. The upper quartile, grade 12, please let us make sure that we go through that and then we understand, especially the last questions where they need to make sure that we do understand what we are talking about. Okay, right. The next part that we are having now will be on analytical geometry. Analytical geometry, I don't want to focus much on the marks, but we know that statistics is 20, analytical geometry is what? It's 40 marks, right? The first point that we're having here, very, very important, that we must be able to prove the properties of polygons by using analytical method. If they say prove that this is a right angle triangle, prove that this is a parallelogram, prove that this is a rectangle, prove that this is an isosceles, we need to know how do we use analytical method to prove these properties of polygons. Right, the concept of collinear, you need to make sure that you understand it. When do we use a collinear points? That one we need to make sure that we have it. Right, the integration of Euclidean geometry on analytical geometry, please, grade 12. When we are dealing with especially analytical, we cannot say now, let me deal with analytical geometry and then forget about the geometry. No, we can work together. Now, if you remember something on geometry that can help you to answer analytical geometry, please bring it up. Make sure that you use it. That is why here we can integrate geometry to what? Into analytical geometry, especially when you are solving the problems. Right, now the length of the tangent from a point outside the circle should be calculated. It's very important. This topic I've already done it. We are dealing with the circle. I want to see now the grade 11. Remember those theorem of grade 11. They will come handy here. The tangent, angle at the center to angle at the circumference. Those one then will come handy. The cyclic quad will also come handy to solve this type of questions. Right. The one that we did in grade 12, equation of a circle. We know that we've got two types of circles in analytical geometry. With the circle that is centered at origin, we have the circle that is not centered at origin. We always say we just look at where the center is. If there is a center there, then I know that I'm going to say x squared plus y squared is equals to r, right? But if the one that is centered at origin, not centered at origin, that is where now we are going to have what? That is where now we are going to have x, I will write it down. That is where now we are going to have x minus a all squared plus y minus b all squared is equals to r squared. So this is the formula that we are using for the circle that is not centered at origin. Please, let's keep it in mind. Centered at origin, x squared plus y squared is equals to r squared. The one that is not centered at origin, then it will be what? It will be x minus a all squared plus y minus b all squared is equals to r squared. Please remember the two, but I always say I can use this one even in the first one, whereby the center is at origin. Why? Because I know that a and b is my center. So this will be the x and this will be the y. So in this case, a is 0 and then b is what? B is 0. Right, what is it that I need here? There are two things I need to determine. I need to know how to determine the equation of the circle. Very important. And the second one then will be the equation of the equation of the tangent. Right? Now, what is it that I need to determine the equation of a circle centered at origin? I always say I only need two things. Number one, I need a radius. If I can get the radius, then I will be fine. I need a radius, then I just substitute it in. If they say the radius of the circle is 5, then I've got x squared plus y squared is equals to 5 squared. Then what is 5 squared? 5 squared then will be 25. X squared plus y squared is equals to the r squared. In this case, r is 5. Then we have the equation then being x squared plus y squared is equals to 25. Right? Then that is the first thing that we need. The second one, we need a point on a circle. We need a point on a circle. That point, you must be told that the point is on a circle. Right? If I were to make an example, so this one is centered at origin, then we're given the coordinates of point A there, which is 4 and minus 3. Which is 4 and minus 3. Now you can see clearly that this point is on the circle. Now, how do I determine the equation using the point? Very important. You just need to substitute it in. In this case, you only substituted r. But now, for this one where the point is given, now you have this one is x, you have this one is y. So it means you can just say, okay, the x is 4 squared plus the y is a minus 3 squared is equals to r squared. Then the first thing that you are calculating, you calculate the value of r squared first, and thereafter you can now do what? You can now substitute it in. Very important. You only need 2 points to determine the equation of a circle centered at origin. But what about the one that is centered at any point, right? This one I'm specific to say, yes, I still need a 2, but I cannot just say the radius. I must say the radius and the center. It means I need a center first. Once I can see the center, then I need the center and the radius. And number 2, I need a center and a point on the circle. Please remember the two that we spoke about in grade 12. Very, very important. Right, converting from the general form to a center radius form. Right, the center radius form is the one that I spoke about here. X minus a all squared plus y minus b all squared is equals to r squared. That is a center radius form. But now, then you'll be given a question on which format? You'll be given the question on the format ax squared plus bx plus cy squared plus dy plus e is equals to 0. So this is the format that you can also get the question from. But now, if we really need to convert from this format to the center radius form, then it means you need to complete the square. Keep that in mind. You group the x's together, you group the y's together, and then you kick e on the other side. Then it means I'll be having ax squared plus bx plus, then I have cy squared plus dy is equals to minus e. Then from there, what do I do now? I know that I must add half of the middle term, then also add half of the middle term. Now, what you do on the left-hand side, you also do on the right-hand side. Please keep this one in mind. Keep this one in mind. Okay, that is B. Right now, the other point which is very important here is a center is a midpoint of a diameter. Please keep that in mind, because in some cases you will be given the diameter, but only the end, the points on the circle. And then for you to get the center of that circle, you need now to use the midpoint. Right. And then the equation of a tangent to the circle, I spoke about it. What you must remember here is that the tangent is perpendicular to the midpoint to the circle. A tangent, let me correct, a tangent is perpendicular to the radius. Keep that in mind, grade 12. Yes. So it means, why do we need that one? We need it so that we're able to determine the equation of the tangent, because most of the time we find that on the tangent we have only 1 point, but on the radius we can get 2 points, whereby now you calculate the gradient of the radius, Then if the two lines are perpendicular, then m1 times m2 is equals to negative 1. Right, which is the point that we are going to, the relationship between the gradient of the tangent and that of the radius, that the product of the two must give us negative 1. Right, these are the type of questions. I'm just going to give you 2 minutes just to scan it, just go through it, read the questions, then quickly I'm going to talk about them, and thereafter then you can go to the next one. This is a specifically grade 10 and grade 11 work. Then after that we can look at the grade 12 work, so that at least from there we can now move to trigonometry. Just 2 minutes, just go through it, then after that then I'm going to come back to you. Okay, right, thank you. I think now you have seen, now you went through those 6 questions, but like I said in the first question on the statistics, to say read the given information first. Read the given information first. In the diagram below, point P, Q, and S are given. SR is parallel to PQ. Please make it a point that you verify if what is written here is the same as what is on the sketch, and where R is the y-intercept. What is the y-intercept? Grade 12, this is very important. Y-intercept, make note next to it. For y-intercept, I must let x to be 0. Very, very important. For y-intercept, x must be 0 here. And the x-intercept of SR is B. So it means here, for you to determine the coordinates of B, you must make y to be 0. Write it down, because that's what we are doing when we are dealing with functions. When I talk to the x-intercept, y must be 0. When I talk to the y-intercept, x must be 0. Please look at that. And then QR is joined. Then from there you are happy with the sketch and the statements given. Then after that now, you can now be asked to calculate the length of PQ. What is the length of PQ? It's just the distance between the 2 points. Then we can use the formula, right? What is the formula? Then the distance is the square root of x2 minus x1 all squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Please make sure that you have the formula sheet next to it. Every time when you practice, sit with the formula and make sure that you select the correct formula. Right, now before I pass the very same question, I must also say that for the very same distance, I always say, fine, this is the distance AB is equals to the square root of x2 minus x1 all squared plus y2 minus y1 all squared. This is a formula that we are using. Yes, to some extent, some of us, yes, we can still use AB squared, and then after that, we can now find the square root on both sides. But now, the easier one, the first step that we need to master, yes, is to determine the length between the 2 points. But now, we must also be ready and for the situation whereby the distance is given. And then we are asked to determine it's either the x value or the x coordinate at point A or the y coordinate at point B. So in that case, please make sure that you master that part as well. Now, if AB is 5, then it means you'll have 5 is equals to the square root. Then you substitute whatever that is given. X2 is x minus 4 squared and plus, then this will be 6 minus 3 all squared. This is the example that I'm just giving an idea. Right, how will I move now from here? How will I move? Then you remember, okay, in grade 11, what we are doing when you solve the equation like this one, then you would square both sides to remove the square root on the other side. Please keep this one in mind. Make sure that you're able to find the distance between the 2 points, and also be prepared in case whereby now the distance is given, then you are asked now to determine the x coordinate or the y coordinate of a point. Then now you must be able to manipulate that formula to get to the answer that we are looking for. Right, and then from there, the other one, we've got the 3.2, calculate the gradient of PQ. Gradient, we know that in a gradient we have what? The formula that we are using is that m is equals to y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Therefore, this is a change in y divided by change in x. Please do not swap them around. You must start with y2 minus y1, or ya minus yb divided by xa minus xb. Very important. I will advise you grade grade 11 that grade 12 that if this is 4 and 7, write it down is x1 is y1, so that when you do the substitution, you don't swap the points around, right? But this is a gradient, this is the formula that we're using for the gradient. And my next question then would be, when are we using the formula? Right, the answer is simple. We only use the formula if we have 2 points. If I have the coordinates of A, if I have the coordinates of B, then I can use the formula. Please keep that in mind. On the line AB, if they ask me to determine the equation of that line, the first thing is the gradient. I can see the coordinates of A, I can see the coordinates of B, then I can use the formula. Right. There are instances whereby you have only 1 point on the line, and then you are asked to determine the gradient of the equation of that line. So what must happen? I always say, right, in that case, we must look for the word parallel. You must look for the word parallel. We must look for the word perpendicular. In most cases, we must look at a sketch because they will indicate that AB is parallel to BC. Then you know that, okay, these two lines are parallel. Now, what happened in this case? If the lines are parallel, then you know very well that M1, gradient of the first line, will be the same or must be the same as the gradient of the second line. That is why we say M1 is equals to M2. Okay, right. For the perpendicular line, very important, we know that M1 multiplied by M2 is equals to negative 1. Please keep the two in mind. Parallel lines, if you have only 1 point, you must look for that. Perpendicular line, if they mention only a point on that line, then I must see if they did not mention something that is perpendicular to the line that you must find the equation for. Please keep it in mind. Then from there you can use the fact that M1 times M2 is equals to negative 1. Then you are able to determine the gradient of the line that you are looking for. Okay, right. And then from there, which is something that you always make mistakes on it, the collinear points. I said you need to understand this one here. I said you must understand the collinear. Right now, what do we mean? Sometimes you find that on the question, you only have the coordinates of A and the coordinates of B. On that sketch, you have only coordinates of A and the coordinates of B. And when the question comes, the question says, find the gradient of AC. Find the gradient of AC. Now, what do you do in that case? Most of us, the mistake that we do, we're forced to determine the coordinates of C, and we don't have to. We don't have to do that. If these points are on the same straight line, then we know that the gradient of AB, is equals to the gradient of what? Is equals to the gradient of BC. That is the first one. Right, the second one, we also know that the gradient of AB is equals to the gradient of what? The gradient of AC. So it means if these three points are on the same line, therefore I know that I've got point A and point B, then I can use the two to find the gradient of what? The gradient of AC. Grade 12, keep that in mind. We say those points are collinear, then they are on the same straight line. So that is why we say if they ask me to determine the gradient of AC and on the line I have only coordinates of A and coordinates of B, then I can use the two, knowing very well that the two will be the same as the gradient of AC. Please, it's very, very important. Right, and then at the same time as well, I must also indicate, because this one still needs the gradient as well. So the angle of inclination. So we need that. We need to be able to determine the angle of inclination. So it means we say that is a tangent of theta is equals to what? Is equals to m. That m is a gradient. Now, very important, look grade 10, grade 12. Right now, we've got this line where the gradient is positive and the second line where the gradient is what? The gradient is negative. Now, what is the difference between the two here? We need the gradient of the line. If the gradient is positive, it means our angle here, remember the angle that we're talking about, it's formed by what? By the positive x-axis as well as the line. So this angle here will be less than 90. It means it will be in an acute angle. So let me give an example. If this one is a tangent of theta is equals to m, you need to substitute it. Then from there, when you determine your angle of inclination, you just say, therefore, theta is equals to the inverse of positive 2. Then you get your answer. Then the answer that you get there, you'll see that will be less than 90. But in a situation where the gradient is negative, then it will be minus 2. Then what do you do now? Then it means you will approach it differently now. It will be the tangent of theta is equals to negative 2. Then you work with that. then the first thing that you do, I always say, it will differ from one person or to another, or to depend how the teacher did present it to you. So you can now start, because now the gradient is negative, we start first with the reference angle, which will be the inverse of the tan. We make that angle, we make that gradient to be positive, and we get the answer. After getting the answer, then now you can now determine the angle theta, which will then be 180 degrees plus your reference angle. Very, very important. That is what we do most of the time in what? In trigonometry. Thank you. And the very same one, grade 12, you use the gradient to determine the angle. That one we agree on. And what we can do also, we can use the angle of inclination to determine the gradient. Keep that in mind. Let us make sure that we understand. Yes, I use the gradient to determine the angle. Then I can also do the same. Use the angle to determine the gradient. Please let us keep it in mind. Okay, right. 3.3. Determine the equation of the line RS in the form AX plus BX plus C is equals to 0. This is not a new equation. This is not a new equation at all. It's the very same one, but what happened? Everything has been moved toward to one side. Please grade 12. Make sure that you know how to determine the equation of a straight line. The formula that we are using there is y is equals to mx plus c, or we can use what? Y minus y1 is equals to m into x minus x1. Then after that, you do the substitution, you multiply, you make y the subject of the formula. But in this case, you don't need to make y the subject of the formula. You move everything. Starting with x, the a will be your gradient, and that will be the coefficient of b. Then if the gradient was a fraction, then you can multiply throughout by your denominator. Okay, right. Then from here, I spoke about the x coordinate. Then you did highlight it up there to say x coordinate y must be 0. You see now you're asked now to determine the coordinates of b. Then it means I need the equation of this. So once I've got the equation of rs, then I'll be able to determine the coordinates of b, whereby now on this equation I can let y to be 0. Right, the size of ORB, this one here, very important, the triangles. Remember now, if you can form a triangle, we've got the sum of the angle in the triangle, then we've got also the exterior angle of a triangle is equals to the sum of two interior opposite angles. Keep that in mind as well. Know how to determine that. That is what we said now, the trigonometry, the geometry that we have learned, we can just incorporate it here on analytical geometry. Prove that QBSP is a parallelogram. What are the properties of parallelogram? Remember those properties so that at least when you use analytical method, I know that the pair of opposite sides is parallel. So if this is parallel to that, then what about P and S? If we can show that PS is also parallel to QB, then this QPSB then will be a parallelogram. Please, grade 12, make sure that you know the properties of kite, rectangle, the square, the rhombus. Please make sure that you know all those properties so that at least we are able to use them when you solve this type of question. This is a grade 10 and 11. If you find the length, if the length is given, if you find the midpoint, if the midpoint is given, if you find the gradient, if the gradient is given, please make sure that you can work on both directions. Right, the grade 12 one, the grade 12 analytical geometry, the one with the center. Please make sure that you understand it. I said you've got two types of the circle, the one that is centered at origin and the one that is centered at any point. Yes, I'm just going to give you also a minute or so just to scan the question, and then after that we are going to talk about the very same questions, just to make sure that at least you know very well how to prepare yourself for this coming examination. Okay, right. Let me repeat. Remember what I said with regard to the statement 4.1. Read the statement, check the diagram. Whatever the information that is missing from the statement on the diagram, please make sure that you indicate it. That is the most important part. Okay. Right, the statement in the diagram below, the circle centered at M passes through C and cuts the y-axis at E. Please just check, this is the center, it means it's A and B, then this is X as well as Y. Right, then the y-axis at E, then it means this is also the y-intercept. How do I determine the y-intercept? Then x must be 0. The diameter CMD is drawn and AC is a tangent to the circle. This is a tangent, it means it is perpendicular to the diameter, also perpendicular to the radius CM. And the other thing that you must remember, the radius is twice the diameter. In fact, the diameter is twice the radius. It's the other way around. Yes, the diameter is twice the radius. Okay, right. 4.1.1. They ask you to determine the equation of the circle in the form x minus a squared plus y minus b squared is equal to r squared. What do we need here? We need only two things. We need a center and the radius, or we need the center and a point. Now, what do we have? We don't have the radius. We only have a center as well as a point. Work it out. First, you substitute what? You substitute the center, and then after that, now you can substitute the point to calculate the radius, or you can use the distance formula to calculate the length of CM, and then from there, then you substitute it back. Please, let's work it out that way. Then write down the coordinates of D. What is D? D is a point on the diameter. So since we have this one, I said the diameter is twice the radius. So it means this is your midpoint. Then you can use the midpoint formula to calculate the coordinates of what? To calculate the coordinates of D. Good. The equation of a straight line AB, we spoke about it. Y is equals mx plus c. The gradient as well as what? The gradient as well as a point. But now, this is a tangent. AB is a tangent. We have only one point, then it is perpendicular. This one is not indicated. It's something that you must remember. Tangent is perpendicular to the diameter. Right, the coordinates of E, what is E? Then you said E is y-intercept, then x must be 0. Right, now look at 4.1.5. Show that EM is parallel to AB. Then the question that I always say, you need to ask yourself, when will EM be parallel to AB? Now we are in analytical geometry, so if they've got the same gradient, then the two will be parallel. Please keep that in mind. If the gradient of AB is the same as the gradient of EM, then we'll see the two lines then will be parallel. Okay, right, and then the other one that we have in now is 4.2. We must indicate whether or not the two circles have in the equation, and that will intersect, show the calculations. Right, now, in this case now, what's important here is if the two circles intersect, this is what we are having here. Then we have the center, that side. So it means this is the radius this side, and we also have the radius on that side. Then we also have the distance of the two centers. So now, this is the distance of the two centers, and this is the radius 1, radius 2. Okay, now, if the distance between the two centers, is equals to R1 plus R2, then it means what's going to happen? Then you can conclude that to say, okay, the circle will touch each other, but they will touch each other at one point. Why? Because now the distance between the two centers is equals to, when you take the sum of the radius of the first second as well as the radius of the second. Now, if they are equal, then they will intersect. But now, if they are not going to intersect, what do you think the situation will be like? Then we have something like this one here. It's a R1, it's a center there. Then you have R2 is also the center there. Then look at this one. It means now, in this case, it means now the distance between the two centers will be greater than what? Will be greater than R1 plus R2. If that is the case, it means now the two circles now will not intersect each other. It means there is no point of intersections because they are far apart. Why? How do we see that one? Because of the distance between the two centers is more than the sum of the two radius. Right, the last one is if they intersected more than one point, then it's a situation whereby you will have something like this one here. It's a center here, there we are, and also have a center here, there we are. Now what's going to happen here? Then we can now see now, okay, the distance between the two centers now will be what? The distance between the two centers will now be less than R1 plus R2. Then it means now the two circles now will intersect each other, but with more than 1.2 point at most. Yes, please keep that in mind. I think the picture will make more sense to you now. If R1 plus R2 is equals the distance between the two centers, they will intersect at one point. But if it is more, then no intersection. But if the distance between the two centers is less, then it means now it will intersect at more than 1 point. Okay. Please, Gr12, that is where the most marks are. Please make sure that you revise. I know that you've just done the analytical geometry in this term. Make sure that you also revise the Gr11 one as well as the Gr10, so that at least you fully understand what is it that you expected here. Right, the next topic I indicated earlier on that we've got 4 topics in paper 2. The next topics then will be the trigonometry. Very, very important. Yes, on this one we expect everything. You must be ready and on all corners of trigonometry. Right, the Pythagoras type questions, we've got 2 kinds, whereby now the question is given in the ratio form, and whereby now the other one is given in the diagram form. So please make sure that you understand, and then you're able to attract the 2. So if it is given in the ratio form, then it means you will have the restriction. So the 5 cos of theta is equals to 4. Write in the standard form, whereby now you can see the trig functions as well as the ratio on the other side. That one is very, very important. And then after that, now you're able to look at the restriction to say in which quadrant must I throw the right angle triangle. Okay, right. The next one then is identities as well as the reduction formula. In grade 11, remember you did 2 identities. This is tangent of theta is equals to the sine theta as well as the cosine theta, and also did the square identities that the sine squared theta plus cos squared theta is equals to 1. And whereby now you can make the sine the subject of the formula, you can also make the cos the subject of the formula. So please have those ones ready. And then for grade 12, what is it that you have learned? What is it that you have learned? You have learned the double angles as well as the compound angles. Please remember your formula, and then make sure that the one that are missing on the information sheet, please make sure that you write them down. Very, very important. Under the reductions, yes, you did the reduction for 180 as well as 360, plus also the reduction for what? The reduction for 90 minus as well as 90 plus. Please, please, please make sure that you understand the difference between the two. Yes, for 90, you always need to change it. If I've got sine of 90 minus theta, then this then will be what? Will be the cos. And check, especially in the second quadrant where we are making a lot of mistakes. If it is a sine of 90 plus, then we're going to have a positive cos. And wherever we have cos of 90 plus, it will be minus sine. We understand very well why is a cos negative or why is sine negative. Please make sure that you understand that. The general solutions, very important, but most of the time this one you can get it also under the trig functions. Right, I always say when you are treating the general solutions, very important, make sure that first you understand how to solve the trig equation. Because now, for the general solutions, you only add k times the period. What is the period of sine? What is the period of the cos? Very, very important. And then also, if you are given the equation in a quadratic form, please make sure that you do factorize. After factorizing, then you check. It is very, very important. The graph, need to know how to sketch the graph. The graph shifted up to the left and right. We need that because the work already covered in grade 11, and the interpretation and also finding the equation of the trig function is very, very important. Right, the height and the distance, and calculate as well as the proof type. It means that will be the application whereby now you use the sine rule, the cosine rule, as well as the area rule. Please, to some extent, we need now to remember or to know how to prove the sine rule as well as the cosine rule, because the element of them coming down to the examination is very much possible. Because now, especially towards the end, it might come now in June, I don't know, but for trial examination as well as the final examination, please make it a point that you also know how to prove the sine rule as a cosine rule, because I think now they might get to the space, since now the geometries went to 40 marks and then trigonometry now it has 50 marks. Right, under the Euclidean geometry, we've got the theorems. Please make sure that you're able to use them, as well as the converses. They are very, very important. And then we've got, your learners must be able to state the theorems in words, very, very important. And then the correct, make sure that you use the correct reasoning. Make sure that you understand the abbreviations. Those are very, very important. That is why most of the time we say, make sure that we've got those ones that we did give. Make sure that you have the correct one. Then, for example, we've got the tan-chord theorem. We've got the tan-chord theorem. You cannot write the full, the tangent, the angle between the tangent, and it's very, very long. But at least if you are using the acceptable reasoning, that is the word that I was looking for, then make sure that you have it every time when you are solving the problem on geometry. Please make sure that you have it. Right, and then the other one that we need to look into is, please, when you respond to Euclidean geometry questions, please, you write the statement and the reason. Statement and the reason. After that, then you can make a conclusion. But you cannot just give the statement and then don't give the reason. Every time on the geometry, statement, and then after that, you give the reason format. It is very, very important. Right, but now, what type of questions can we expect under Euclidean geometry? Please, and this is where we need to make sure that you plan your work nicely. Calculations, we've got this type of numerical questions, whereby now you'll be given the angles 90 degrees, 60, whatever, 45. Now, those ones are numerical. I will show the examples now. So please make sure that you're able to do those ones, whereby now you're given, this is 35, this is 40. You're able to apply all the theorems that you have and the converses that you have learned. Right. Completing a statement, that is the most part, and this one we can only get it right if we are able to mention all our theorems. If the question says complete a line from the center of the second perpendicular to, then you just complete. Then you do it that way. So that means that is the next question that you must prepare yourself for. Then expressing an angle in terms of, yes, this one will differ from this here to another. You must be able to express the angle in terms of x, in terms of p, in terms of t. It will depend on the what is given on the question. Proof type questions. Prove that AB is parallel to CD. Prove that ABCD is a cyclic quad. Prove that triangle ABC is isosceles. Please, grade 12. Those are the type of questions that you must make sure that you know. But number 5 is the most important one. You need to know how to prove a theorem. In grade 11, we have 4 theorems that you must know how to prove. Then in grade 12, only 2. Then it means all in all, you must know 6 theorems when you go for Monday paper. Please make sure that you know that very, very, very well. Yes, before I go to this one, I'm not going to solve it, but let's just look at what I was referring to. Right, look at this question. Look at this question. In the diagram below, PAL is a tangent to the circle at A. Right, and then C and B are points on the circle such that CB is parallel to PAL. Then AB, AC, and PB are drawn. Then PB intersect AC at D. Then A1 is equals to 78. You check the sketch. But now, I always say, fine, we know now, I believe that all our teachers, this is what they are doing to say, grade 11, grade 12, now we're busy with grade 12, you know that the theorem that we have learned, grade 11, we can group them in 3. The one that talks to the center, which theorems are those ones. The one that talks to the point on the 4 points on the circles, which theorems are those ones. And the one that talks to the tangent also, which theorems are those ones. Then when you read the statement, then they say PAL is a tangent. PAL is a tangent to the circle. Then you immediately stop and then you say, okay, if this one is a tangent, what do I have? what do I have? You check, okay, do I have tan-chord theorem, or do I have a tangent perpendicular to the radius, or do I have tangent perpendicular to the diameter? You check all of those ones. Then you go C and B, but these are not the 4 points. Then it means the one for cyclics are out. Then CB is parallel. If it's parallel, what angles do you have? I know for parallel lines, we have co-interior, we have alternating angles, we also have corresponding angles. But I must indicate that when you talk to the 3 angles, don't forget to indicate the parallel sides. Co-interior angles, why? Because PAL is parallel to CB. Indicate those ones. Okay, but this one is a numerical one that I started with. Read the statement. Please learn to make your sketch very, very late, grade 12. Please learn to make your sketch very, very late. You have this one here. Okay, which one is also 78? If it's this one, then indicate that also be 78. And then after that, you can the C. Then after that, you make sure before you can even look at the questions, make sure that you do everything on the sketch. And then after that, now you can answer. Determine the size of each of the following angles with a reason. Then C. What is C? There is C. Can you see now? This one required me to have what? This one required me to look at the parallel sides. Then ABC. ABC, that angle there. What is that? You give. If it's 78, then you see 78, your reason then will be the tan-chord. Then they want A3. What is A3? Since this one is a tangent, then A3 is equals to C. There is a tan-chord theorem, right? And then from here now, it's easy to get A2. That will be angle on the straight line. There you are. Right, that is the first group that I spoke about. Please make sure that this type of questions, you practice a lot of them. You practice a lot of them, whereby now you are given the angles in terms of numerical. Okay, right. The next one now is whereby now we have a proof type questions. Proof type questions now they write, look at this one. Write down with reason 4 other angles each equals to A. Yes, A. Remember what I said earlier on. Remember what I said, okay? It's this side. We said you must be able to express an angle in terms of, now in this case now we are talking to A. In this case now we are talking to A. Now, which other 4 angles equals to A? Then you check those ones. Which one? Then you name and then you give the reason. Then here's a proof type. Prove that T2 is equals to 2T1. Prove that T2, here's 2T2 is equals to 2T1. Here it is. Very, very important. Right, let's look at that, and I can see now, I can also see angle at the center is twice angle at the circumference. There one is O, the O, why O is equals to this one here. Please, grade 12, let us make sure that we revise. The other one that I spoke about, prove that SORT is a cyclic quad. Then when will a quad be cyclic? How would I know that? Opposite angles, exterior angles, or angle in the semicircle subtended by the chord. Please, those are the things that you must look into. Now, the value of A, it means now you can see which angle can you add together to give you 180 or whatever the case might be. Here's another proof type question. Show that TR is equals to RQ. Very, very important. Please, like I indicate, these are the types of questions that you must make sure that you go and look at. Very, very important. Very important. Proof type, numerical, completing the statement, and those 6 theorems for grade 11, as well as 2 in grade 12. Especially grade 12 1. Surely I always say this one I must make sure that I know them by heart, because one of them can be in the paper, which is the similarity or proportionality. Please make sure that you know how to prove those ones, and always show the constructions, write it down in words, and then show it also on the sketches. Very, very important. Okay, right, grade 12, I would say please practice. Yes, I was running fast on this one, but I know that, looking at whatever that is indicated, to say, okay, be careful of the following. Numerical, be careful of expressing the angle in terms of A, and then the proof type. Those are the ones that are going to say, okay, let me sit down and make sure that I practice this type of questions. And then once you've done that one, then I'm saying that the Monday paper will be very easy. It only needs you to practice and try to take as many past papers as possible to make sure that you know different of way in which the question can be asked. In those ways, I want to say thank you very much, and then good luck with your examination on Monday, and do your best so that at least after that you are able to reflect back to say, in preparation for trial examinations, I need to focus now on the few or 3 things that you did not get right now in trial examination. It's not going to be easy, but we trust that you can do much better. Grade 12. Good luck.